is one of the most outspoken critics of police use of force here in the Valley, but he gets some on-the-job training about use of force tonight.
Very interesting stuff. Reverend Jarrett Maupin led protests and marches after Phoenix police shot and killed an unarmed man. Well, tonight he gets a chance to experience the split-second decisions that police have to make when encountering a suspect.
Hayden was right along with him tonight, getting the training as well. This must have been eye-opening.
It was a really interesting experience. You know, we've all watched those protests all over the country after police officers are accused of shooting people who aren't armed. But what would happen if one of those protesters felt what it was like to wear a badge and then be put in a life or death situation himself?
So I'm going to have you put the holster on right inside your belt loop there.
Jarrett Maupin gets his weapon. You might recognize him as a high-profile organizer in the minority community. Just last month, he led marches on Phoenix Police headquarters after an officer shot an unarmed man.
We want his badge, we want his gun, we want his job.
Today, he accepted an invitation to look at things from the other side, agreeing to go through a force-on-force training session with the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. 3 scenarios where you have to decide to shoot or not shoot. Scenario 1 is a call about a man casing cars in a parking lot. Maupin approaches the man and starts asking questions.
What? We have your hand in your gun.
You're looking for your vehicle. What kind of car do you drive?
We have your hand in your gun.
What kind of car do you drive?
It's my car, man.
Oh. Maupin, the officer, is shot. It happens that fast.
At what time did you think that it was time for you to address the use of force that was given?
When he came to the back of the vehicle.
Okay.
And was hiding. You know, I could sense something was wrong.
Scenario 2, a call of 2 men fighting.
What's going on today, gentlemen?
What's wrong with you?
What's going on today, gentlemen?
What do you want?
What's happening here?
What's wrong with you?
Back up.
Huh? What are you doing, man?
Hey, he shouldn't approach me. He shouldn't approach me. He shouldn't approach me. He shouldn't approach me.
What happened in there?
Yeah.
What are you doing? You just shot him?
Hey, he rushed me.
Tell me why you shot.
Well, I've shot because he was within that zone. You know, I felt there was an imminent threat. I didn't necessarily see him armed, but he came clearly to do some harm to the officer, to my person. It's hard to make that call. It shakes you up.
Again, an unarmed man was shot. Scenario 3, a call about a possible burglar walking down the street. Maupin gets him on the ground. He's not complying.
I need you to keep your hands up, sir.
For what?
Because I need to check that waistband.
Well, why? What are you doing,
Because I don't know what you have under there.
Everybody, look at this guy. What are you doing?
No shots fired, but the suspect did have a hidden knife in his waistband. I went through the scenarios too, without seeing what Maupin did.
Well, do you have keys, or do you have anything to show me that?
Don't worry about it.
No, I need to talk to you. Come on out over here. Well, I'm dead. Maricopa County Sheriffs, get on the ground. Get on the ground. Both of you, get on the ground. Get on the ground.
For what?
Get back. Get back.
Same results for both of us. Things happen very fast out here. I asked Maupin what his biggest takeaway from this exercise will be.
I didn't understand how important compliance was, but after going through this, yeah, my attitude has changed. This is all unfolding in 10 to 15 seconds. People need to comply with the orders of law enforcement officers for their own sake.
Thanks to the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office for taking us through that today. It was an eye-opener.
That's a tremendous admission that Reverend Maupin just made.
Right.
That you need to comply for your own safety.
Right, and he saw it. I mean, he plainly shot a man who was not armed but was coming at him, and he felt, that he was unsafe at that point, that he was coming after him, and he fired.
Yeah, and I don't think any officer goes into work thinking, I'm going to shoot and kill somebody today.
No.
But these interesting, things happen, like the guy coming from behind the SUV, boom, and you're dead.
And you are. Six shots he got off.
How did you feel about those scenarios when you were going through them? Did it change your perspective?
Yeah, I've been through one of these before about 4 or 5 years ago, but it just reinforced how fast things happen. And you think at the time, I can think through this and I can figure this all out. No, it's boom, it's just there. Yeah. It's that fast.
I have a lot of respect for Maupin for going through that.
Yeah,
I agree.
I do too.
And agreeing to go through that and seeing it from the other side as well.
Do you think it changes the way he approaches these issues going forward?
He says he's going to go out into the community and say what he said at the very end there. You have to comply with what police officers tell you. Let everything sort out at the end, but just do what they tell you right then and sort things out afterwards.
Interesting. Maupin joins us live here on the set. And, you know, the thing is that you two both went home last night. You were shot in this training exercise, but you both got to go home last night. I mean, did you think about it a lot?
I did. As I reflected on what we went through, the intensity of the situation didn't leave me. It was very eye-opening.
Reverend Maupin, I know you've gotten a lot of feedback both from members of the community who follow you and also, I would imagine, members of the media and other people who just saw it online. Tell us about some of the reactions that you've heard today.
I've been surprised by some of the support from law enforcement and from people outside of the African American community. For the most part, black activists and organizers have been supportive, but there is sort of a fringe group that's frustrated because they see any cooperation or any type of understanding or compromise as violating the tenets of the civil rights movement.
Like you're a sellout? They think you're selling out?
Well,
or what do you think?
Nothing could be further from the Kingian principles, nonviolent, in the tradition of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And these are folks, frankly, that are occasional activists. They're not out on the front lines.
Well, I mean, it's one thing to protest, but eventually the two sides have to come together and say, how can we work on this? The police saying, we're willing to go through additional training. We'll wear cameras. And what is the community willing to do on top? And you were saying, comply. Comply first. Deal with if there's anything done wrong later.
Well, that's what the NAACP is saying. That's what President Obama is saying. That's what all of the major mainstream groups are saying. We're also calling for a de-escalation of force on the part of officers to approach situations differently, maybe with less force. But the key to that is citizens complying, following the directives of the officer.
But you saw how that was handled with your own training. You know, the guy who was casing the cars, both of you didn't use force on him, and right away he shot at you. So you can see why in that moment where the adrenaline's flowing, you're afraid, and you want to go home, frankly, at the end of the night, where you can pull the trigger. Absolutely.
That's why complying is so key. There's no cowardice in complying. There's no indignity in complying. If your civil rights are violated, you need to live to tell the tale. Comply and live. Don't reject the officer's instructions and die. No one will ever hear your story.
Reverend Maupin, just a few weeks ago, you were marching right down Washington here with a bullhorn saying, we want your badge, we want your job, talking about the police officer who shot an unarmed man. Do you still feel that way?
I do still feel there are more questions than answers. I want an independent investigation into the circumstances surrounding the death of Romaine Brisbane, whether it's another county attorney, whether it's the Fed stepping in to investigate this. We want an objective investigation, like I demanded and received in the case of Michelle Cusseau, the mentally ill woman who was killed because she had a hammer in her hand. But I still want my community to do everything that it's responsible for doing, complying, law-abiding. You know, just because you're black and you have a hoodie on and you're out front of a liquor store doesn't make you a suspect. But when you become suspect because of a call, or when an officer places you in that situation, comply and maintain your composure and your dignity, so that we can fight that civil rights case that comes out of that, or you can walk free. You know, the demand for identification, the demand for your motives, what you're doing in the community, is not unreasonable, and it's everyone goes through that. White, black, brown, red, yellow, we're all questioned by police.
Quickly before we let you go, do you think this will change the rhetoric? I mean, some of the rhetoric, and Troy mentioned that was said at some of these protests. Would that change now after you've walked a mile kind of in their shoes?
We have protests and protesters, we have outrage, but there still has to be solutions. The police aren't going anywhere, black people aren't going anywhere, people aren't going anywhere. We have to work together and find compromise, policy change, policy reforms. And if you don't go through the training and you don't put yourself in their shoes, how can you relate to them? Right. That's the challenge. A
lot of respect that you did that.
Yeah, really appreciate you going through this with us yesterday. I think it did open some eyes, so thank you.
Reverend Maupin, thanks so much.